This is Abnormal Entertainment.
2, 3, 4. Walked into the tunnel just to find the light. Hunted for old demons, looking for a fight. Looked up at the stars, seemed to go forever. There must be a way, it all fits together. Fell into the quicksand, held on to the vines. Never could quite color, stay within the lines. Feels like I have wings, I can fly wherever. This is just a way, it all fits together. Finally saw the world through rose-colored glasses. Gonna share my journey to small and large masses. Give up on my life, no sir, me never. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together.
Hey everybody, this is Daniel Garza and welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to start as usual thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Warriors, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Inviting all of you to check us out at abnormalentertainment.com, where you can find all the shows on the network. Go check that out. Today I'm excited. I have Mr. Mel England on my show. How you doing, sir?
Hey.
I had to tell the folks because it's been a couple of years that I've been following you for a while. I heard about you through some friends and then kind of stalked you on social media like I do most of my guests. And honestly, I was impressed with your bio. It's so interesting, and we'll get into that in a minute. But how are you doing?
I'm great.
Beautiful house.
Oh, thank you. I know. We moved to the Valley about a year and a half ago, and it's been great. I was trying to avoid the Valley forever, but my dad came to live with us, and we wanted a yard for the dogs, and we had to move very suddenly. So
it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, we're really lucky.
Plus, as I was driving by, there's a lot of diversity in restaurants. I'm all about the food.
Oh my God, there is actually. There's a sushi place around the corner now that used to be, it's now just like sushi, but before it was like it was like called Mex sushi or Mex something like that. And we never made it. And I was like, I wanted to go see what was going on with this Mexican sushi, Japanese fusion.
One of the best things that I've discovered at one of those fusion type places was, at least in Laguna, they call it the Luke Skywalker. I don't know.
Oh.
It's a jalapeno stuffed with tuna and then deep fried. What's the word? When they deep fry the stuff. Oh my God. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. I'll think about it in a minute. Halfway through the conversation, it'll pop out.
Like a pot sticker or whatever. Fried.
Yeah, and they'll just fry it, and then you just bite into it. It's this jalapeno tuna.
Wow.
It's
like
so yummy.
Call it a Luke Skywalker.
But if you ever come to Laguna Beach, I will take you to my favorite sushi place. So yes, I've been following you for a little while. You are a man of many talents.
Thank you.
Actor, producer, activist.
Activist, totally.
So I'm not even going to keep going. England, tell us how you put it together.
Wow. Well, I started acting when I was very young, and I was about 5 years old when I was telling you earlier, my adopted mother came into my life, and she had worked as a young girl at the Dallas Theater Center in the costume shop. No, not as a girl, in high school. So she knew that they had like theater classes for kids, and she had been the babysitter, and then she married my dad, and then she, adopted me. So she enrolled me in these classes, and I just took to it like, water. I just loved it. So I grew up at the Dallas Theater Center, in Dallas, and, went to the Performing Arts High School there, which there was a lot of crossover with the teachers and stuff, because it had been both the high school, the Performing Arts School, Arts Magnet had been started by Paul Baker, who did the Dallas Theater Center. So it was sort of like I grew up in this family of people in the theater in Dallas. And then I went off to New York on scholarship to NYU and studied with Stella Adler. And I was just very blessed and lucky as a kid. You know, I was really, you know, I got to grow up in the theater, and, you know, I did my first professional play when I was like, you know, I think in 6th grade, at the Dallas Theater Center.
Do you remember what it was?
That one, no, actually 4th grade. That one was Cyrano de Bergerac.
Wow.
Which was this play, you know, people who know the story, the guy who has the long nose. And, but what was wild was the guy who directed it was this really famous British actor. At the time, there was a TV show on PBS called Lily, and he was sort of the husband that goes crazy. And so I knew who this guy was, and I was just so starstruck that, you know, this was the director. And I was just like a kid that was, you know, in the big party scene, and then there was a big fight scene. So anyway, but I got to, and then a couple of years later, I did A Christmas Carol, and I played Scrooge as a boy with like the big Dallas actor, Randy Moore.
Wow.
And so I remember Roger Staubach, who was, you remember from Dallas, the big quarterback, for the Cowboys. And he came to the show, and he patted me on the back, and I was just like, good job, kid. And I was like, oh my God, Roger Staubach patted me on the back. So yeah, I was very fortunate that way. And then I went off to New York, and then very quickly, I mean, I was so excited to be I was studying with Stella, like at Stella Adler. She was like Marlon Brando's acting teacher.
Wow.
You know, so I was very fortunate. And very quickly thereafter, when I was about 19, I got diagnosed with HIV.
Oh, wow.
And so that happened very suddenly in my life. And, you know, at that time it was like 89, and the doctors told me I was going to be dead in 6 months. And
so you're part of that first generation of folks.
It happened very soon. I mean, I was not, that was 89. So certainly there were people who, I think in 83 is when it first started.
Yeah.
And that was Grid.
We always think like, this is my take, like 85 to like 90, that first 5 years where they were still like the AZTs and
it was all about the AZT.
And people not surviving and not knowing and cashing in their money and like
all of that.
All those first 5 years that set the foundation for where we are now, I would say.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, it was a nightmare, you know, at that time.
So let me ask you while we're there. First off, for folks that are not familiar with Dallas in the 80s and early 80s, late 80s, what was the whole Dallas, the TV show rage? People thought we were a lot more elevated than we were. But Dallas was not, I mean, that fancy yet. We were getting to that stage.
You know, it's really weird that you say that, because growing up at the theater center, I was around, not like socially, but there were a lot of wealthy people in Dallas. And they went to the theater and they supported the arts. So there were a lot of patrons of the arts. So I kind of was living a double life. I was living many double lives, but that was one of them, in that, you know, I was around a lot of the people that did have money, at least when I was at the theater in that way. So, I mean, to its credit, Dallas did support the arts. But then, you know, it was basically, I mean, I was telling you my mother's Mexican American, so I just grew up with, you know, tostadas and lengua and enchiladas.
That's real Mexican.
Oh, I did, yes.
Real.
And in fact, I mean, I was close with my dad's family, but we'd only see them at Thanksgiving and Christmas, although I saw my dad's parents a lot.
Yeah.
But I was really closer with my Mexican American family, which I know you understand.
Yeah.
Big family gatherings all the time.
Anybody who talks about Mexican food and goes all the way to lengua
or
cabeza,
that was my favorite.
You know.
That was my favorite. Which, yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, so yeah, I grew up in it. But so it was kind of, Dallas was weird.
Yeah.
It was very conservative.
It definitely grew into itself, because I moved out of Dallas in 94. So by that time, it definitely started growing into the metropolitan that it is.
Yeah.
But it wasn't in the early 80s.
Yeah, I think they were in the early 80s. Yeah, it was still sort of like a smaller, I mean, it was still one of the 10 biggest cities in the
Right.
U.S., but it was like a Cincinnati or whatever. It's really changed. I mean, now it's like, it's insane.
I'll be there next month for a conference.
Okay. So we're going to compare notes when we get back.
We'll have to talk.
Because the diversity alone, and politically it's changed. I mean, it's just really amazing. So I'm really proud of Dallas.
So you go from Dallas to New York.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, the main thing was, and, I was surrounded by some of the most incredible artists in the 20th century, and I didn't even know it. I mean, I was studying with Stella Adler. On the next floor was Martha Graham, where we were studying at City Center. So, I even met Martha Graham one time. I met all these really incredible, I never met Andy Warhol, but he was around. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was kind of a different time in New York too. And so it was a city that was full of a lot of possibility, and it was partly possible because of the fact that it was so cheap. You could live there, relatively inexpensively compared to what it's like now.
New York now, yeah.
So,
okay, so you go from Dallas to New York, living this dream. You're basically the show Fame. Yeah. Because, I mean, late 80s, you're an artist, you're at this great school with so much creativity. You can basically lick it off the walls, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And then something very tragic, I can't find the word, happened. Something that completely puts the brakes on you. How do you handle that moment?
Oh, wow. I think I just shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened was, New York was amazing for me because in Dallas, I basically had to live in the closet. That was the world we had at that time. And although the gay community was very strong there, but it was just, especially as an actor. And so when I got the diagnosis, I just thought I'll never be an actor. How can I be an actor and be pause? That wasn't even a possibility. The only role model I had was Rock Hudson and the doctors. And it wasn't just even the doctors. It was the whole world. It was what everybody believed at that time. The doctors, certainly, family, friends, the TV, the media, all believed I was going to die.
There was no one talking about hope.
There was very little. And so that's actually what I gravitated to. And I had a friend, my best friend from high school, and she had moved to Colorado to work in a health food store. She was sort of like a granola hippie type, and but spiritual. And she's now a reverend at Agape.
Oh,
yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
So Victoria, Reverend Victoria, many people know, but we were best friends, and she had moved to Boulder, and she was working in this health food store, and she was one of the few people I could talk to. I was so shut down. I just remember I was in my dorm on Union Square, and I'd look out the window every day and think about jumping.
Wow.
I just thought it's over. And my life had so much potential and possibility, and then it was gone. So I talked to Victoria, and she said, you should come out here. People are healing themselves of all sorts of things. And she was working in a health food store. And my first job in Dallas had been working at Bluebonnet's Market, which was this health food store. And I remembered that there had been a lady, I would juice wheatgrass. And there had been a lady that would come get 8 ounces of wheatgrass every day. And she said she cured herself of cancer. So I somehow thought, okay. And so I went to Boulder. I quit school and I went to Boulder, and I thought I'm going to just do alternative medicine because it was the only place that there was hope at that time. Right. I stayed away from the AZT because the people that were taking AZT were dying faster.
Yeah.
And and I, to be honest with you, and, it's something that was real at the time. People thought these kinds of things, but I just literally thought that somehow the government or the World Health Order, I smoked a lot of pot, so I was very conspiratorial.
Ah.
So I thought that they were trying to kill the gay people. And so I had no faith in the medical industry. I had read an article in the New York Times in the late 80s. It was probably around 88 or something. And, or maybe it was 89. Maybe it was the summer before I got diagnosed, but it was sort of revolutionary because for the first time, the Bush administration, I guess, was saying that anybody that was at risk should immediately go get tested and immediately should get on this level of AZT. And I remember reading it on the front page of the New York Times that the government was saying people should do this. And I just thought, I have no reason to believe these people have my best interests at heart.
Right.
At that time, I had all sorts of skepticism. My birth mother had been from New Mexico, and I'd seen what happened to Navajo and, indigenous people.
So there's a lot of history in your head.
There was a
to
lot
not
to
believe anything.
contextualize it. Exactly. So I was smart and paranoid and very lucky.
That's a very bad combination sometimes.
It wasn't, but it was lucky for me because that paranoia kept me alive. And I stayed away from the AZT. I never really got the homeopathic thing because I was going to be a homeopathic, macrobiotic vegetarian. I was going to do all these things, and I'd go to the health food store and I'd buy all this stuff. And then, I was going to, on any given day, I was going to quit smoking and drinking and sugar and coffee and cigarettes and alcohol and pot. And, I'd just like, get overwhelmed and I'd drink a cup of coffee and then I'd think, oh my God, I'm killing myself. And so I'd smoke a joint to calm down.
Of course.
And then I'd end up at the bar that night. And so it was always tomorrow. It was always tomorrow. And, the thing that happened was that because I was running in this community, I got turned on to things like Louise Hay.
Okay.
And I'd listen to Louise Hay tapes every night, going to bed. I'd listen to her saying, talking about visualizing your parents in this aura of light and forgiving them and forgiving the world. And I remember, I had a saying on my front door of my room, and it was like, I now allow the world of love it was just some beautiful thing. And then I remember I was driving home one day in Boulder and I heard, Deepak Chopra on the radio, on Larry King, back when Larry King, before he was on CNN, he was on Mutual of Omaha radio late at night. And so I was listening to Larry King's show and Deepak Chopra was on there and he said he was promoting a book called Unconditional Life. Mm-hmm. And I heard him talking about this and he said, I am an infinite field of potentiality. And I heard that and I so desperately wanted to believe that. And I wrote it down on a piece of notebook paper in like black Sharpie and taped it above my bed. And I would bicycle up the side of the mountain in Boulder every day chanting, I'm going to live, I'm going to live, I'm going to live, I'm going to live. I was just so desperate to believe that it was going to be possible. I never really got the homeopathic vegetarian thing down. But I had hope and I was determined.
Determination is such a beautiful thing.
So a couple of years later, I did some plays in Colorado and then I thought, what am I doing out? I got to get back to New York. And so I moved back to New York in like 93. And, that's when I sort of went off to the races. My addiction really caught up with me and I was like, screw this health food thing. And I remember I literally decided to go to McDonald's. I got a Big Mac and I got, some Marlboro Reds and I was just like, that's it.
That's rebel right there. That's rebellion.
So, last couple of years and then I got sober in 98 and that was when I really, got my life back. I almost died of AIDS, of course. I almost died of AIDS. It was the January of like 90. No, wait, what? I always get confused on the years. 97, January of 97. And then, I was in the hospital with AIDS.
Wow.
And then, or no, that may have been February. I think I went to the psych ward first. That's what happened. Yeah. Cause I would always have these nervous breakdowns, and, because I was a mess. I was smoking so much pot and I was so afraid and there was so much. So I would end up having these breakdowns. And
so this was all the same year?
yeah, I had a nervous breakdown. I was in the psych ward. My mother came up to take care of me. And then that's when she convinced me. I didn't even realize it, but I had gone down to like 100 and some odd pounds. And, when they got me into St. Vincent's, in the emergency room, I was in denial. I had KS all over me.
Really?
I had 13 T cells. I'm very lucky I didn't have pneumonia. But,
wow. Cause there's a whole lot that just happened in the last 4 years that we've been talking about it. Actually, 5 years from moving back to New York to getting sober. It was 93 and 98. So that's 5 years. In between
well,
then.
It's about 97. I should correct it. It was 97.
Okay.
It was the fall of 97 that I got sober, in October.
So,
I always say 98 because then 98 was sort of the first year of my life back.
So you go back to New York, you leave behind all of the teachings of Colorado, basically. You not only stepped into like addictions, you jumped in foot first. Why?
I was just, at that point, I could never figure out whatever it was I was supposed to do, and it seemed too hard. I had gone to Santa Fe. I was going to work with this homeopath. And then I did all of these, like, I ping-ponged across the U.S. I lived in Nashville for a while
were you trying to find your life purpose?
I was trying to, I think beyond a purpose, I was just trying to figure out a way to live. And it was so bleak. And until the new drugs came out, there wasn't really any hope. And I think what happened in those last several years that you're talking about is I finally was like, I'm just going to enjoy this while it lasts.
Got it.
And
that makes sense.
And, I started acting again, and I was doing a lot of stuff in the city, but, it was a crazy time. And my addiction, I was very good at sort of hiding it. A lot of people, when I got sober, a lot of people were like, well, you weren't that bad. And they just didn't know. Cause in New York, you could do this thing where you'd go from one bar and say goodbye to everybody and then just get in a cab, go to another one, and then go to another one, and then go to another one. So I was very good at hiding it. I had this, it wasn't until I got sober that I realized what I would do. I would only go to the same bartender twice. Because I didn't want them to think I was drinking too much.
Got.
But the party was really over when I started doing cocaine. So that was like the end of the line.
And for my listeners, they've been following my journey for the last 7 years. My addiction was so connected to my anxiety and my panic attacks that I would use one to hide the other, basically. Because you talk about going to a psych ward.
Yeah.
Do you think there was this wheel that you were running around in?
Yeah, it's funny because after I got sober, then I went full on into, I was doing sobriety. I would go to meetings. I went into therapy. One of the first things my sponsor said was, you need a therapist. So I went to therapy. And
I only giggle because I've heard that before. Yeah.
And then I also was seeing my psychiatrist still because I was still on these bipolar meds. So, I was getting a lot of help. But what happened is that I started to realize very quickly that if I was going to get better, that I needed to do a lot of work and that I'd been running away for a long time. And, it's no surprise for those of us that remember the really dark times of growing up at a time. This year is the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. And
I'll be in New York for that.
I'm going too.
Yes.
I'm I'm on the board of the Lavender Effect. We'll talk about that more later. But, it's hard to, sometimes like these, the kids these days, whatever, the younger generation doesn't really, it's one thing to hear it in a story, but it's another thing to live it. And when, you had to live life in the closet. I mean, especially I was an actor. There was no template at that time. Actually, one of my best friends from my years in college was the actor Craig Chester, who came out at that time. He's one of the few actors that was out. And, there was just not really a template for that.
Yeah.
So how, when you're living a life, you're not, in a closet with, not really with my friends, but even when I go back to Texas with family, it was one like, don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
When you're living a life like that, it really does catch up with you emotionally, spiritually, physically. So the best thing that happened to me was when I walked into AA, sorry, I should talk about it in
to the rooms.
Anyway, yeah, I know I walked into recovery. There's a reason that I just draw a line with AA. I really, it's not really about AA specifically because, no one speaks for AA.
Right.
But when I got into recovery, it was amazing because suddenly people were telling the truth.
Yeah.
And I could talk about being gay. I could talk about having HIV. I could talk about mental illness. I could talk about all of it. And I had lived a life where I thought I was supposed to keep all of that secret. Mm-hmm. So no wonder I was crazy. No wonder I was running away from the pain with drugs and alcohol. Interestingly enough, after I got sober, I haven't been to a psych ward since.
Good for you.
Yeah. Except to be a speaker at an AA meeting.
They don't have a reservation set for you anymore.
Well, and I will say that it's always an option. I mean, if I had a breakdown of some kind and I needed to go, that would be actually the sober thing to do.
It's interesting that you bring it up because it wasn't long ago, probably a couple of months ago, that in a conversation with one of the other advocates that I know, I was like, can you just check yourself in for a weekend and just let somebody take care of you for a little bit?
There's actually a real, to talk about, this is like sort of an advanced, recovery concept, but there's a real template for people in recovery sometimes needing to go do more additional work. The only reason I didn't go back to like a psych ward, for example, is I got very close. When my birth mother died of alcoholism, I practically had a breakdown.
Wow.
There were other times when other issues came up that I had to do a lot of deep work. And I just went to every other 12-step program there was. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. I went and I did that work. So I just I was on the verge a couple of times of feeling like I needed to go in. And I think that that's the difference, is that now I see, this issue is coming up and I need to deal with it. I can't run away from it. I've got to face it head on. I knew that if I was going to stay on the planet, number one, I didn't want to be crazy anymore. I didn't want to be addicted in this, donuts maybe. But actually caffeine is my major addiction.
There's a Voodoo Donuts here in California now. So,
but I had to deal with all those issues, sex and love issues. I had to deal with my trauma.
Yeah, if anything that I've learned is that issues, let's call them issues come in combo packages. They're like a Jack in the Box $5 meal.
Yeah.
You can pick what you want, but it always comes in a group.
And there sometimes can be a belief system in some places in recovery that this is all I need to do. I just am going to do this. And then, when people start talking to me about, God or the steps, and they're like sucking on a cigarette and they're like, sleeping with, half of the community, I'm like, maybe you have some more work to do.
We need to talk about it. Yeah, because there is one of the things when I went to rehab in Texas, down in Dickinson, Texas.
Wow.
You know what I'm talking about?
No, it just sounds like it's out in the middle of nowhere.
It's between Houston and Galveston.
Okay.
And if you sneeze, you miss the exit.
Oh, wow.
It's not even off the freeway. You miss the exit. I was the only gay guy in the house.
Wow.
There was 28 guys, and I was the only openly gay guy in the house.
Oh, right.
So really getting to talk about my issues was not easy.
Right.
So when I got out, luckily Houston has a big gay recovery group. So I was able to go there and talk about some issues.
Yeah.
But you need to, for anybody out there listening, if you're in recovery or want to be clean and sober, do homework and really find your, for lack of a better, find your tribe.
You know, it's really wild now because there are actually, treatment centers that are focused on helping gay men specifically.
Yeah.
And I actually am friends with, I don't know if you know Alan Downs, who wrote The Velvet Rage. It's a very important book about gay men and addiction and the core issue of shame. It came out about 2005. Anyway, Dr. Alan Downs is just opening the Gay Men's Institute in Palm Springs, which is specifically not only for gay men dealing with, alcohol and drug addiction, sex addiction, sexual trauma, all of those issues. And, there's really not, I just want to say it's amazing that people now have resources and places that they can go to like that. The reason I said that, it's like, I don't think you're ever really done with the work. Like, there's always going to be more work to do. And it's not a drag. It's like, I'm sure on the outside it can sound like, oh my God. But, eventually, they call it the bridge back to life. You get your life. I was so lucky I got sober. I got my career back. I'm now in a relationship with Tony. We've been married we've been together for 11 years. We got married in 2011. So I guess that's what?
8 years?
8 years. It'll be 8 years this summer.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We
Awesome.
got married in New York. The moment it passed, cause it was legal in New York, but it wasn't the country, it's that still.
Well,
so
you, again, for
I never
reason,
thought I would be in a I wasn't capable of having long-term relationships. We were so broken. Not everybody. Some people were, but do you know I didn't know many gay guys that were in long-term relationships, and we were all so broken, and the AIDS crisis did it. There was so much. I literally I think I was programmed to not let anybody close to me because I didn't want to die, or I certainly didn't want to, be,
right.
I was so paranoid and very careful about, trying to be safe. And it was I just couldn't let anybody close. I was afraid of people leaving me because of it. It was really hard.
One of the things that I had to get over when I got sober was comparing myself. My parents, my sisters have been in long-term relationships. My parents have been together for over 65 years. My sister about 40, almost 50. Well, her husband passed away, unfortunately. But my other sister's like 30 something. And I was always trying to compare myself to them. And after a certain age, I was like, I'm never going to do it. So why even try?
Right.
And then I met my current partner. And
that's what happened to me. I gave up.
Yeah.
And when I gave up, it happened.
Yeah. The universe was like, okay, you're done fighting this.
Yeah.
We found somebody for you.
Well, also I was looking for I was looking in all the wrong places, and, and also in many ways, I think you actually have to spiritually and emotionally be ready. And I think both of us were ready when it happened, but that wasn't a light switch that was going to go off by force of will. It's like something had to happen to me.
Yeah.
It's almost like it was, on some level, it's when it was about a year after my birth mother died.
Wow.
On some level, I think I was also locked in a pattern around my relationship with her and her alcoholism. And, this is deep ACOA stuff, but, I think I was, chasing a fantasy relationship because I had a so much of the relationship. When you have alcoholism in your family, it can be very difficult. That's why I encourage people that get sober to keep going and to do all the work. Stop putting the drug and the drink as step one. Then we have there was a reason I was trying to kill myself. with drugs and alcohol. And so when you stop doing that, you're like, oh my God, I was really angry.
What would you say? Because we've talked about everything that's got you to where you are now, but if you had to pick the first thing that you needed to do, for anybody who's out there listening who feels a little hopeless, or the first thing that you had to do to get you to where you are now?
Well, it was to get sober.
Yeah.
And that happened because I'd almost died of AIDS, and they put me on these new pills, and suddenly I was getting better, and I kept forgetting to take the pills. Mm-hmm. And because I would go out and drink, and I was like, this isn't going to work. And so in a nutshell, I went to AA because I was scared that I was going to, die. Suddenly I cared about living.
Wow. That's a concept.
And so
carrying things on its own baggage.
And I went to AA not even thinking I had a problem. Like I literally thought I just had a problem with cocaine because I was, doing cocaine, and it was making me stay up all night and drink, and then I was forgetting to take the drugs. So if I just stopped cocaine, so I'll go to AA while I, for a while, yes, and calm down. And that's when I realized, oh my God, and I knew I was a pothead because I was one of those people, I smoked pot before, during, and after everything.
Wow.
And I was constantly stoned from 13 to 28. And so, once I got into AA, I started to realize, I had been a mess for a long time. But, we're usually the last ones to know.
It's funny that we have a lot of things in common. The day before I went to rehab, which was Friday, that Thursday night, I threw a party at the bar, of course. And I told the bartender, my issue is with drugs, not with drinking.
Right.
I'll see you guys in 3 months. I'll be back.
Yeah.
And they all looked at me like, bye.
Yeah. An addict is an addict. That's why, but I had to learn it the way I had to learn it. But that was the first step. And then I think like the second step is, I realized that if I was really going to get better, they talk about in recovery being happy, joyous, and free. And I really wanted that. Yeah. And so all of the things that were bringing me pain or issues, like that's how I knew I needed to work something. It was like, I have Al-Anon issues, because what happened was I'd been dating a guy. A couple of years sober, I was dating this guy who was an active alcoholic. And then I wanted to jump off a building. So trying to get him sober and all this nonsense. And so I go to Al-Anon, and that's when I realized, this has nothing to do with this guy. It has everything to do with my mother and what had happened with her. And so I had to just keep going. And what's this deal with relationships? I had been, basically locked in, a paradigm of, not being able to have a relationship with another human being. And that's because I was in New York, and it's very easy to get by having one night stands, 2 week this, 3 month that, as soon as it was difficult by. And, so I lived very, I never learned how to date, but I didn't have those tools because we didn't learn them. Right. That's the part where it's so deep. It goes back to, I didn't get to go to prom. I went to prom with Laura Decker, who I love, but I'm just, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
We didn't get to learn that. We didn't get to learn, so when I got sober and I started therapy, I had this great therapist, and he was like, now you get to have your adolescence. And I was like, oh my God. So I had to learn everything and kind of start over. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter. I think we're at a time now where, the world is so hard. Like it's really hard out there. And the last thing, we need to do is make it hard on ourselves. It's hard enough to get on the, phone with, like the internet company and figure out why isn't my Wi-Fi working, much less to be stoned in doing that.
Because during high school, I was telling you in the pre-interview, I went to high school in Mexico.
Right.
So in order to not invite girls to the dances, I would always tell them, I'm not going. I have something else I need to do. And then I would just show up unexpectedly. And they'll be like, oh, you made it. I'm like, yeah, that got canceled. So that's why I don't have a date.
Right.
So that's how I got around not having dates
Right.
to parties or dances.
Right.
So let's talk about transition now, because you were in New York, but now you're here in California. So
Well, actually, I split my time.
Okay.
To be, so I still, I keep my apartment in New York, and
So you're bi.
I'm bi. Once you go bi, there's no going back. I always say that. But about 2005, or maybe it was 6. No, it was around 2005. I was like, you know what? I've never been out to LA. I should go check that out. And I sort of felt like, I started getting my career back. I was working in the professional, I was doing stuff off Broadway. I haven't been on Broadway yet, but for me to get to the place where I was working off Broadway, that was a very big deal for me.
Right.
And, I'd done a little film work, but I just felt like I'm an actor. I was in my 30s. I was like, I should do it. So I came out here, and very quickly I started getting work. I mean, I got a lead in a film that got distribution, was on Netflix, and it was sort of a life changer.
What was the name of the movie?
That movie is called Little Big Top, and I play, ironically, the town drunk in the film. It's no longer on Netflix, but people can, it's on the, what do you call it? You can order the DVD.
Got it.
And I think people can stream it on
we'll find it.
other places. And that was great. It's a movie by Ward Roberts, and, the lead actor was Sid Haig, who's this big sort of horror movie star. He was in these Rob Zombie films.
Okay.
So I'm sort of the foil. He's trying to get sober, actually, and I'm trying to get him to go out and be crazy. But, it's a comedy and a lot of fun. But that kind of was my first, and I've done several, feature films since then, and I've done a couple of web series, and I'm doing a play right now called Electricity, which is about a couple of gay guys. And it's been amazing. We've been doing it in Palm Springs for about a year and a half. And we went to Minneapolis with it. We went to, it's been to Columbus. We're currently in the process of going back and forth to New York for backers auditions for investors for Off-Broadway.
Nice.
We have we have some investors on board. We have several Broadway producers on board. So it looks like we're going to be taking it off Broadway, but that play has oddly been almost like a gift from God, because it is about these two gay guys that hook up in their high school reunion in 1983, and then they proceed to meet up every 10 years at their high school reunion. And you watch their relationship grow from 83, 93, 2003 to 2013. And during that time, I played the guy that moves to New York and is the sex addict and the alcoholic and crazy. The other guy's all in the closet.
Wow.
So it's sort of like City Mouse and Country Mouse.
Wow.
But they sort of fall in love with each other. And you watch what happens with the AIDS crisis, and then you come to gay marriage, and you just watch the whole transition. And it is so powerful for people. It is, I can't even tell you, gay men and actually straight people come and see it. They're like, this isn't even a gay play. It's just a play about relationships.
Yeah.
But it's really powerful because it shows the history that we've been through.
I'm going to have to talk to you.
I want you to come see the play.
See it. Yes.
Yeah.
Now I want to, it's almost wanting to make me cry right now just thinking about it.
It's so powerful. And my character actually, I don't want to be the spoiler, but by the end of the play, the last act, he's getting sober.
Wow.
And so when I first started, I'd actually seen the play, because originally Terry Ray, my co-star and the writer, was doing it here in Los Angeles with a wonderful actor, Kevin Scott Allen. And I saw it, I loved it. I just grabbed Terry afterwards. I was like, oh my God, this play is going to help so many people. Thank you so much. And this is my story and so many people's story. Not really thinking anything of it. And then when it moved to Palm Springs, Kevin couldn't go with it. So I took over the role.
Wow.
But the part that surprised me was how much I related to the character when he was getting sober, because he's a couple of years sober and he doesn't believe baby snoring. Yes, baby snorer. But he doesn't believe that it's going to be possible for him to get into a relationship. He thinks he's always perpetually going to be, messed up.
Yeah.
And, I had been at that place and I was like, this is so real. And right on the other side of that, there is hope.
Yeah.
So I actually believe that, that Brad's that he's going to figure it out. But it's really wonderful. And we've been getting amazing reviews. We just won like best production in Minneapolis alongside Hamilton.
Wow.
And, best actor, along with Richard Thomas from The Humans.
Wow.
I got that. I was like, what?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to like hook up with Terry Ray to see if he can come on the show.
Oh my God. Yes. You should have Terry on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he's a great guy.
And
And he's got a million and two amazing Hollywood stories.
so before we get into, cause we're almost at the 45-minute mark, before we get into my questions, imagine that we're in this long tunnel of your life, everything we've talked about. As you turn around to look at everything you've been through, how would you describe it?
Miraculous.
Yeah.
And conscious. I think there is a conscious decision. If you want to live, if you want to create, that's the part that I think that when the AIDS crisis happened and all of that happened, that was the part where I was like, oh, on some level, I knew how to create. And so when you've learned that, to create, I don't care what it is, but, there's something about creating is that you have to visualize. And so I had to visualize hope and possibility. And that is that one thing that I think that we have as a resource in the gay community. So we had to do that for so long that we know how to do that for the world. I was a few blocks away from the World Trade Center on 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And I saw the second plane go in and, ran from the buildings that they came down. I had a friend who died. And one thing that happened is that we went that evening. I was up in the village by St. Vincent's where I'd almost died of AIDS, standing outside the hospital, and they were expecting everybody to come, and no bodies came. But I remember in that moment having this realization, like, oh, I've been through this before. I know what it is to survive apocalypse. And we as gay men have such incredible strength in that way. And I feel it's our profound responsibility to share it with the world.
Amen. Yeah.
And help other people understand. And it's not just, American people or black people or white people or whatever people. It's everybody. The world's really out of balance. And so I feel like we have hope to share. And that's one of the reasons that I decided to be out, especially about my HIV, when I first came out. And I think in 2009, I did my solo show, Swimming with the Polar Bears, off Broadway. And when I did that, I was telling my story. I had cancer a year before. Tony and I were just in a new relationship. And so now I'm like, God, wait, I'd survived AIDS. Now I have cancer or what? So I survived the cancer. And it was, the same thing that, HPV, which a lot of gay men with HIV, but I got through it. And then I thought, I had been scheduled to do a play about the environment at this college in New York. And I had given them the title Swimming with the Polar Bears. So I thought, how do I do a play about swimming with polar bears and extinction and extermination and not deal with the fact that I just had cancer? And that's when it clicked. I was like, oh, this is a story about me surviving. And so I told my AIDS story and my cancer story, and I tied that in with the environment. So in the play, I was going through cancer treatment. And then I would have these in radiation, I would be sitting there and I would have these dreams of, Eskimo shaman telling me that, that we had to find the polar bears. In Inuit belief, the polar bears become magical. They're like the aurora borealis in the sky, in the night sky.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is if we don't treat them with respect, it will bring harm on the community. And so the polar bears don't have anywhere to go because all the ice is melting.
Right.
So in the play, I had to go to the polar bears and ask them for forgiveness.
Wow.
And that, so that's how I put that together. But I realized that, as survivors, because that's what we are. We're survivors. We're pioneers. Actually, Stephen Fales from Confessions of a Mormon Boy, who you should also talk to.
Okay.
He got excommunicated from the Mormon Church when he came out as gay, and he does a one-man show and all over the world. Anyway, but Stephen told me one day at lunch, he said, "You're a pioneer." And that's what we are.
May I ask what cancer you had?
That was the HPV related,
okay.
They were diagnosing it as anal cancer, but it was like, I had this.
Dude, we are because I went through anal cancer a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So my listeners all know about my story.
Yeah, well, mine was actually up near my tailbone, so I didn't know what it was. It was I had no idea. I had HPV when I was a kid, and it was in the front. And anyway, so, but it grew, and it became, it was a problem. So they caught it right in time, and,
Good. Good.
But, yeah.
I feel like we're anyway.
More will be revealed. To be continued.
My emotions are it's like mirror. Of course, you're way better looking than I am, but
no, stop that.
It's like,
You're
Jesus.
so handsome. By the way, you are, I was telling you, because I'm half on my mother's side, I'm
right.
Navajo and Pueblo and Spanish, and that side of my family is as dark as you. I wish I had an ounce of what do they call it? Melanin?
Melanoma?
No, not melanoma. Whatever.
Yeah.
The skin.
Yes.
Just a little bit, but I got all of my dad's white skin.
People listening will be like, Daniel, you're kind of dumb right now. I know.
So.
Okay, so there's more to talk about off record, but this is a part of the show where my guest, let me choked up, where my guest shares some words of wisdom with my listeners. So, Melanie, what words of wisdom would you like to share?
Love yourself. In the words of RuPaul, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? And I think that that's the main thing I had to learn, was how to put down the whip and pick up a feather and start to really love myself. Even in the recovery world, we can become very mean to ourselves and to others. I always say, the only thing you get from being rigid and judgmental is rigid and judgmental. So I really feel like our job is to be nice to ourselves and then be nice to others, even our wounded. They say we don't shoot our wounded, and we don't shoot those who shoot our wounded. We need to be really loving. A few years ago, I went on a peace march. My friend Carrie Harrison from KPFK was organizing the peace march. It was against the Iraq War. And all the celebrities, like the usual suspect celebrities came. Daryl Hannah and Cindy Sheehan, who was the Iraq War mom, was there, and Sally Kirkland, who has become a dear friend. She's going to play my mom in a movie. Anyway, so I got to walk with the celebrities, and I was like, oh my God, because Carrie was like, you're going to walk with us. So I was like, cool. So I'm walking and Arun Gandhi, who was the grandson of Gandhi, was there.
Oh, wow.
So we were marching with him. And then this other group of anti-war activists came, and then they were screaming and shouting and, saying all this stuff. And the tone of the march changed and became very harsh. And Arun Gandhi decided to leave. And so he was going to have to walk through this crowd that was getting almost militant. And so all the celebrities like gathered around Arun Gandhi, and we went off and we left the march. And we went to Plummer Park for the press conference. And they asked him why he had left the march. And he said, I had learned from my grandfather that you can't be for peace and fighting against war at the same time. You have to be the love.
That makes sense. I can respect that.
I am trying to do that every day, and sometimes quickly, sometimes not so.
But you're right about I am my worst critic. I can leave here, and on the way home, somebody can call me and ask, "What have you done today?" I'm like, "Nothing. I've done nothing." Although I've just finished leaving an interview. It's amazing what you're doing, by the way. Oh, thank you. You're helping so many people. Well, I just stalk the people that have the stories. Well, I don't mean I'm just saying, like, just the fact that you're being out and talking about it, and it helps and inspires people, and well, that's what we have. This is all we have. This is our family. I tell folks that I've already been through it. As you, I was a victim of sexual abuse when I was younger. Then AIDS, alcohol, recovery, cancer, an ostomy. Wow, I'm so sorry. And then anxiety and panic attacks and depression. And like, I just tell people I'm an overachiever. I want everything in life, so I'm going for all the illnesses possible. See how many I can collect before. But I'm already going through it, so I just want to show people that no matter what, it's not easy, but it's doable. I want you to start collecting health. That's what I want you to do. When I had cancer, somebody turned me on to a spiritual teacher, Abraham Hicks, and who sounds crazy, but you start listening to her and she's kind of amazing. But anyway, one of the things that she talked about that helped me so much was she said, when you encounter resistance, it's actually a sign of what you don't want, of what you want. Yeah. Sometimes we find out what we want from what we don't want. Yeah. And so I was like, here I am having to go through chemo and radiation, but that's actually a sign of what I really want is health. What I really want is wellness. I've just gathered, I've learned so much in my life. Like, for instance, and people have heard this story, when I was diagnosed with AIDS in 2000, I was like 108 pounds. Oh my God. 110 T cells. Same thing. People thought I was dying, and family members, this was in Houston, family was coming to visit because they thought I was leaving. A priest came to my room. Right. I didn't take it serious. I was like, I'm going to walk out of here. Like, I don't know what you people are doing. I even told the priest, when God gives you the note to tell you that I'm dying, you bring that to me, and then I'll believe you. But I was like, I'm going to walk out of here. Like, it's just AIDS. Like, what can happen? But I think not taking it serious is what got me through it, because I wasn't so concentrated on the bad side of it. Right. I was like, I know there's a tunnel, and I know there's a light. Well, you believed somehow you were going to be okay. And everything in my life is that way. Everything. And I think that's the key. That's the key. You have to believe. You have to. It sounds crazy, but I just believe one of the reasons I'm still here is because I firmly, even when I was lost in my addiction or whatever problem I had, on some level I was fighting. Yeah. And there's that little post that's out on Facebook all the time that says something along the lines is, now I just drew a blank. Being positive minded doesn't mean you don't have bad days. It just means you're going to get through it. And I've always gone through it. Like, God has some big plan. My older sister's joke to me is like, don't you know how to die? Like you keep getting to this point where we're all like, he's gone. Even in cancer, I was down 223 pounds in a wheelchair. We both did go through the same things. Crazy. I flatlined twice. Wow. During my treatment, not through treatment, but because of secondary things. So I saw a light. And I came back. So I firmly, this might sound conceited, I believe that God has some mission for me to do. And I'll tell you, I'll record it and I'll tell you a story that happened a long time ago. But I know that. I know in my heart, I know in my spirit that God has some mission. And if it's chasing people around for interviews, I'll do that. If it's doing a card reading for somebody or doing a Reiki session to make them feel better, I'll do it.
Yeah.
If it's standing in front of 20 or 2,000 people to share my story and somebody walks up to me and goes, yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly why I do what I do too.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because I'm still live in this world where I'm an actor and, sometimes I talk about my alcoholism or, HIV and sometimes I don't. And it's, I'm just saying like, I don't like to necessarily lead with it. Like, if I'm doing an interview about a film or whatever, but, sometimes it's sort of like, it's just a part of my story.
Yeah.
And then, you get to go on and be you. And, one of the things that I've realized is that, cause a couple of years ago I went on Oprah to talk about the sexual abuse. It's the show that she did about 200 men that were, talking about being survivors. And, at the time I had a friend who was like, God, you don't want to be that guy. He's the AIDS guy. He's the, sexual abuse guy. And I was like, that's exactly why I'm doing this, because I am not that guy. I am me. Those things don't define me.
Right. And
that's why I can talk about it. And it's not because I want to live in the victimhood of that.
No. Yeah.
It's because, it's when we transcend adversity that we actually become no longer a victim to it. We have power over it.
Right.
And that's only through,
well, and cause like you, I also do, I'm an actor as well. And I still want to be on a show. My dream is to be on a show, be a regular on a series. And there's a couple of pilots out there, so if anybody has seen them, please pick them up.
Okay.
But I'm also a stand-up comic, and my showcase after I took the class, so hello to Cool Beans Comedy, I took their class, and our showcase, half of my set is talking about my first visit to my colorectal doctor.
I love it.
I'll send you the link. And I'm talking about him probing me.
I want to.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I know what you're talking about. I did that. So I want you to talk to my friend Jason Stewart.
Okay.
He's like an out gay actor from he came out 25 years ago.
Wait a minute.
A comic.
Jason Stewart. I interviewed Jason Stewart.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I know. We interviewed online because he couldn't make it.
Okay.
But yes, I'll send you the link so you can watch this episode.
Cool.
He's really, his story is very
amazing.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. And he's another trailblazer. But, something somebody said to me a few years ago, I know we're out of time, but is, he was like, Mel, you have to remember we're the first generation to do this.
Yeah.
So we're just figuring it out. And we don't really, half the role models are dead. And before that, everybody was in the closet. So we're getting to figure out what is it to be gay and open and married and pursuing our dreams. And, so, congratulations to you.
I just think you just keep going, even when somebody tells you can't, or you shouldn't, or you're not good enough. You just keep going. I've had many people who I've asked to be on the show, and they were like, "Oh, I don't do small shows," or this is too intimate for me," and I'm like, "Well, I've been on the air for 7 years, 250 episodes, but who's counting?" But I'm like, okay, well, all I can do is ask you, like, you've got my info if you're ever interested. And I've had people a couple of years in come and, hey, something happened in my life and I want to share it. Can I come on your show and do it? Like, I've been listening to you. I'm like, Def, come over and share. Like, there's, as you know, when we talk in pre-production, there's no pressure.
Yeah.
I don't tell you what to talk about. So,
yeah.
But I love it. I've learned so much. Okay. So I've got 2 more questions. We'll go.
Okay.
We're over time, but
okay.
Who cares?
I'll try to be brief.
It's my show. I run the time. And you might already have this in the book of Mel England, what is the first sentence?
Wow. He was born a child of hippies.
That's cool. And if you could name this episode, what would you name it?
Sitting on my couch, talking to Daniel with baby sleeping on my lap. About life and love and perseverance. That's a long title.
That is a lot. I'll try to work it out somehow. You might have to do it in Spanish to make it shorter.
Oh, and I'm wearing the Vietnamese flag, by the way.
Is that what that is?
Yes, it's from when we went to Vietnam to see my Tony's family, our family in Vietnam.
See, being a Texan, the only thing I thought was like Lone Star State.
Oh, that's so funny. And, people, I guess it could be just this, but it is the Vietnamese flag.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hello to anybody from Vietnam who's listening.
Yeah, totally.
If you think back to when you were bright-eyed and ready to go to New York for the first time, you can go back and talk to that Mel before he gets on the plane. What would you tell him?
Don't give up.
Cool.
Believe. No matter what. In yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know this would probably be hard to pinpoint, but what has been the biggest gift in your life?
The biggest gift?
And of course, it doesn't have to be material.
Besides it's all like, I feel like it's all the same. It's been the love and support that I have from my family, my father, both of my mothers who I loved so much, and I love the one who's still living, and my husband, Tony.
Yes.
That is the biggest gift because I found a way back home.
I think that one of the most beautiful things as gay men that we have is that concept of our adopted family, because even though in that group we might have blood relatives, we choose.
Yeah, and sometimes the worst thing you can do is be around your family. I mean, many of us, I went through many years of exile, and it's a complicated story. Now my dad's living with me and it's so great, but we went through many years where we were separated. And, for him to suddenly wake up and totally be okay with me being gay. And he lives now with me and Tony. A friend of mine, when Dad came to live here, he was like, it's like a sitcom. And I was like, wow, maybe we should do that.
Start writing it. Yeah. You might need a Mexican neighbor. So just think about that as you're writing. I'm just going to throw that out there. Yes, I'm shamelessly throwing myself in there, guys. So we're out of time, but any last words for your followers, for your fans out there?
People can follow me on Facebook. Mel England Actor is that page, or I'm on Twitter at Mel England and Instagram at Mel England. It's 4 M's. The other Mel England was taken. And I have, people can see me in the latest season of Child of the 70s that just came out. It's the 5th and final season.
That's right.
And I play a very overblown hothead actor named Victor. And you can watch Ron and Laura Take Back America on iTunes and Amazon. And Best Day Ever, which I did a few years ago, which is a film about a gay man going through a midlife crisis and finding love, which I'm very proud of.
And how long will you be in Palm Springs for?
Well, Electricity, we're doing at least through June or July, actually.
Okay.
We have dates. It's about once a month we go out there, and then we are, like I said, working on taking it to New York for the fall.
Okay.
So,
well, we'll definitely post the information to that, to
cool.
the play on the site.
Because
I want to come to the next show.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'd love to have you. We have to figure that out. And then you can also interview Terry maybe.
Yeah. I've not been to Palm Springs, so I need to come out.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know. My gay card doesn't have that.
Yeah, it's a definite
sticker on it.
It's a definite must. Yeah. No, it's a really great place. It's amazing. It's beautiful. Yeah.
I am so thankful, and I'm so excited that I got to meet you finally and hear your story. Like I said, people don't believe this, but I don't really stalk people that much online, but I'm always like up to date on like, okay, well, they're working on this or they're working on that, just so I have an idea. But it's all the things that you don't see online that the show is about. And thank you for trusting me and sharing all this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me do this, and keep the faith.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a resource for people. It's great.
Thank you. Coming from you, I feel like, oh man.
And everybody should love Baby too.
Very good, by the way. She's
a good little girl.
So for everybody listening, we had actor, producer, activist Mel England on the show today. Please check us out at normalentertainment.com, where you can find all the shows on the network. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Go to the Facebook page, Put It Together, and you can find all the links where you can find me. Stay tuned for more. There are still more shows coming up on Put It Together. There is more Put It Together Conversations, which are the live episodes that we do. So check that out on Facebook Live. We'll have some more coming up with, especially with Life Coach Tommy, which you guys seem to have liked very much. Also, go like the Better You Workshop page, which is my spiritual page, where you can find some of the exercises and workshops that we've done so far to help you become better you. And I play along with you guys, so go check those out. For now, I want to thank Mel for being on the show. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you to my producer, Mr. Kevin Morris, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. And this is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together.
This is how I put it together.
This is how I put it together.
This is how I put it together.
Subscribe to Put It Together on iTunes, Stitcher, and at abnormalentertainment.com/putittogether. Find Put It Together on Facebook and tweet Daniel at Lil Messican, LILMESICAN. And for more podcasts, comics, books, movies, and more, head to abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.